Today we'll be introducing the new topic of statistics, but I'm hoping that a lot of the concepts we're talking about do sound a bit familiar and you've heard them before in previous years. So see this list of words on the screen at the moment. I want you to write down a definition for as many of them as you can. So I'm using some pretend data here. For the questions that we do in today's video, I've just recorded all the number of points I scored in my last few games of basketball. As you can see, I suck, so my scores are quite low, but I want to work out a bit of information. I want to summarize my data. Instead of having this long list of numbers, I want to be able to talk about my basketball scores in a more concise way without having to reel off this big list of numbers. So what I want you to do first is pause the video and write down the definitions of as many of those words as you know. If you don't know some of them, it's fine because I'm going to go through them with you now, but I'm hoping some of them look familiar. So next to it, write down a definition for as many of them as you can, and then come back and we'll go through them in sections, a few at a time. All right, do that please. Let's start with the top three. Here they are. The mean is a fancy word for the average. Please make sure you are writing down exactly what either I've got on the screen, or a better way that makes more sense to you in your own words is fine as well. But make sure you are getting these notes down in your book so you can look back to them as often as you need to without needing to come back to this video if you forget. So the way I like to describe the mean is it's a fancy word for the average, and to work it out, I add up all my basketball scores and then divide it by how many scores there are, how many numbers there are in my list. So that's how I've chosen to phrase it, but if you can think of a better way in your own words that makes more sense, you can write it that way instead. Totally fine. The median is a fancy word for the middle number. Now, a really important note, I've written it in brackets, but I want you to highlight this so that it really stands out. The median is the middle number, so it's another way of saying if you put the numbers in order from lowest to highest, this number in the middle is what I refer to as the median. We'll understand later in the chapter why we need the median and what we use it for, but for now, let's just know what it means and know a quick way of how to work it out. But really, really important, highlight that fact that the numbers have to be in order from the lowest to highest. Otherwise, the middle number could be anything depending on what order you write them in. It means you'll all get a different answer if you've all got the numbers written in different orders. So make a really important note of that. Numbers have to be in order from lowest to highest. And the mode, we love the mode because it's a really easy one. There's no maths or anything involved to find out the mode. That's just whatever number you can see the most, whatever number appears the most in the list. Often it's referred to as the most frequently occurring number, but it means the same thing as that. It's the most common number in the list. You call it whatever you want. All right. The next two, see if you can work out the range and the lower quartile. We'll just do the next two. Range is a word that we use all the time and in everyday context, so see if you can find a meaning from that. And lower quartile you might remember. If not, we'll go through it together, but have a go first. All right, the range is just a fancy way of saying highest number minus lowest number. That's it. And the lower quartile, write this down if you didn't have this in your definition, because I think it does make it quite clear. The lower quartile is whatever number is halfway between the lowest number and the median. So to work out the lower quartile, we do have to already know what the median is first. So sometimes there might be a couple of steps involved. I've written in brackets some abbreviations, so often it's too long to write the word lower quartile every time. Questions might refer to it as Q1 or QL or 25%, because lower quartile, it's the lower quarter or the first quarter. That's what all those little abbreviations mean. Lower quartile is a quarter of the way into your data, because it's halfway between the start and the middle, which is the median. Next to the median, if you wanted to, you could write 50%, because the middle number is 50%. That's halfway. So you could put 50% next to the median if you wanted to. I think that'd be a good idea. Otherwise, try, based on what you know, predict what we should write next to the upper quartile, because it's down near the other end of the list of numbers. I want you to have a go at that, and if you know what interquartile range is, guess that too, but they'll come up next. Here they are. Upper quartile is halfway between the median and the highest number on the list of data. So it's down the other end. And again, we call it the upper quartile, so QU, Q3, or 75% are all abbreviations. Now it's not Q2, because Q2 would mean the middle or halfway. The median is technically Q2, but we just don't really call it that. And interquartile range, often we call it IQR, just to save time again. That is Q3 minus Q1, or upper quartile minus lower quartile. You write it down any way that makes sense to you, as long as you've got the same information that I've written on the page. Now let's move over to same set of data, but I want us to actually work out what some of these things are. Let's start with the mean. We'll pause each time so you can do it before me, stay out of the black. I want you to work out the mean, or my average number of points that I score in a game. And this is very, very common in sports analysis. They don't often list the scores that a player gets every game. They say that his average points per game is this. So follow your instructions. You need to add up all those blue numbers and then count how many numbers there are. That's what you'll divide it by. I'm going to write it as like a fancy fraction because I'm too grown for divided by symbols. I hope you're the same. Work it out, use your calculator, and then I'll come back with the answer. When I added up all my numbers, that equaled 64. And when I counted, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. So I divided it by 9. And it gave me this never-ending decimal. 1 decimal place is fine, rounding off to 1 decimal place. So the correct answer is I score an average of 7.1 points per game. So you probably wouldn't want me on your team. I'm not very good. Now I'll show you how to calculate the median. Now while this method seems a little bit primitive, a little bit babyish almost, it works every single time. When you're trying to work out the median, you just have to work out what number is in the middle. So I like to do it by putting a pen on the very last number and a pen on the very first number. And what I'll do is move my pens in 1 point. You can just use your hands if you like. Move your hands in 1 number each time until your fingers meet, till they touch. So if I move in 1 point each time, watch where they go. Now I'm on these 2 numbers. Move them in 1 more point again. Now I'm on these 2 numbers. And keep going, keep doing that, and you'll find that your fingers will touch, or they'll meet, or they'll land on a number. Circle that number, and then that is your median. Write that underneath the mean. When I did that finger moving thing, my hands met at number 8. So I've circled it, that's my median, 8. A really crooked number 8. You get the idea? And the last one, the mode, you just need to look for what number appears the most, write that down next to the mode. The mode is 9 because in my list there are 3 number 9s. So that's my mode. Okay, next I'd like us to work out the range. So have a look at your instructions, work out what the range is and write that on your list as well. Okay, the range, you could probably do it in your head because it's so simple, but I do want you to get into the habit of writing it down and showing you working out. The range is the highest number, which is 10, minus the lowest number, which is 3. So your range is 7. Now I'd like you to work out Q1 and Q3, or lower quartile and upper quartile. Let me help you a little bit with Q1, and then I want you to try and do them both on your own. See how you've circled this number? That means it is used up, it's out of action. We're going to do that thing with our hands again and start from each end until we meet somewhere in the middle. To find Q1, the instructions tell us it's halfway between the lowest number and the median. So we'll start again by putting our hand on the lowest number, and even though it says the median, because this number's been circled, it's out of action, you can't use it anymore. So you can't put your hand near that number. Once it's circled, it's out. So that means I have to put my other hand here. So my 2 hands are here. And once again, I'll keep moving inwards until my hands meet. So if I go in, this is to find Q1. If I go in one spot, now my hands are here. My hands haven't met yet. If I go here, now my hands meet. But we have a little bit of a problem because where they meet didn't actually touch a number, didn't land on a number. It was in between two numbers. So when that happens, you need to do this same little trick every single time. When your fingers meet between two numbers, you have to write down those two numbers. Well, basically, Q1 is whatever's in the middle of 4 and 6. You could probably work that out in your head anyway, what number's in between 4 and 6. But sometimes the numbers could be really far apart. It could be a 4 and a 28, and you wouldn't be able to do that in your head. So what you have to do is whenever you end up in that situation, you add the two numbers up, and then you divide it by 2. Always divide it by 2. So whenever you do the little hand thing and your fingers meet in between two numbers, add up the number either side of the little green arrow that you've drawn, and then you always just do divided by 2. Make sure you write it just like that though. Your calculator gets confused if you try and write it in one number after the other and then you press divided by. You might have found the same thing when you were doing this too. You can't just do plus, 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 and then put divided by 9 on the end. Because of BODMAS, your calculator gets confused. So same thing here. Because of BODMAS, you can't just do 4 plus 6 and then press divided by 2. Write it like that and you'll get the correct answer every single time. Really, you know that between 4 and 6, the middle number is 5. So if you type it in your calculator and you're not getting 5, you know you're typing it in wrong and you just need to ask for some help. Do the exact same thing to try and find Q3, please. When I did Q3, my hands met in between the numbers 9 and 9. So you think it's simpler than it sounds. What number's between 9 and 9? Well, 9. So Q3 is 9. Because again, if you added them up, 9 plus 9 is 18. 18 divided by 2 equals 9. So if it's the same number either side, it's just as simple as that. Last thing, I would like you to check your notes again to find out the IQR, interquartile range. Do that now. The interquartile range is Q3 minus Q1. Again, I've shown my working out. I've already found Q3 and Q1, so I just do 9 minus 5 equals 4. Okay, one more example with a different set of numbers, and then we'll move to the questions. Okay, this time I asked one of my teammates how many points he scored in each game of basketball. He's a fair bit better than me, as you can tell. So these are the scores that he achieved in the last 6 games of basketball. I've taken out a few things to make it a bit quicker for us. I only want you to find the median, mode, Q1, Q3, IQR. Now you can work as far ahead as you like, but I'm going to go one at a time here. Start with the median. Put your hand on each of the outside numbers and move until they meet. You'll find this one's a bit different because once again, if you've done it correctly, your hands will meet or will land in between two numbers. So see if you remember what to do before when that happens, the whole dividing by 2 thing. Find the median first. Go. All right, if you did it correctly and you moved one spot in at a time, your hands will have met in between 13 and 18. So this time you can't circle a number for the median because your fingers met in between two numbers. So you're going to do that trick again. Add the two numbers up and then divide it by 2. If you've done it correctly, you'll find that the median is 15.5. So your median here is 15.5. Next one, the mode. Okay, that's what number I see the most common number. Well, all these numbers are different. So see if you can work out what you should write down in this scenario. When that happens, you literally just write down no mode because there's no number that's more common than the others, and that's a totally correct answer. Okay, now to work out Q1, we can do the same as before. We remember that Q1 is right between or halfway between the lowest number and the median. Now, remember when I said if you circle a number, it's out of action, you can't use it anymore? Well, you haven't circled any numbers here, so all these numbers are still in play. That means for Q1, lowest number, yep, you can start there. And then the median, well, you actually can use the 13 because it hasn't been circled, so your hands start here and here. Do the same as before, move in. It's a pretty quick journey this time till your hands meet and write down Q1. Okay, because we started here and here, there's no circled number, so no number is out of play. Move our hands in. Whoop, they meet at the number 10. There's your answer. Do the same for Q3 on the other side, please. Okay, correct answer is 21. And lastly, calculate the interquartile range. Look back at your notes if you've forgotten what that is. Correct answer is 11. Q3 minus Q1. Last thing, I've been very generous here in that I always put the numbers in order for you from lowest to highest, just to save us time in the video. But make a note. I'd like you to even write it again now at the top of this example. Because for all of this stuff here, everything on the screen apart from the mode, your number list must be in order from lowest to highest for all of these purple things on the screen, except the mode. Make another note, write it at the top, highlight it. Put numbers in order from lowest to highest so that you never ever forget. All right, that's it. Let's do the questions.